Okay, so after a week-long break, Eden Zero is finally back with chapter 203, and I think we all know what the big reveal for this chapter was. And trust me guys, I'm just as hyped as you are to talk about it, but before we get into that, we have to go over what happened in the rest of the chapter just because there's so much to talk about when it comes to the ending reveal for this chapter. There's so much to speculate on it, and there's so much to interpret from it that it's going to take up a majority of this video, so I want to quickly go over everything else first and then jump into that. But before I get into the chapter, I do want to mention, in case you guys haven't heard already, Eden Zero Season 2 has officially been confirmed to be coming in 2023. Okay, so the chapter opens up exactly where the last one left off, even showing Laguna and Jin in the exact same poses they were in at the end of the last one. Which, speaking of the last chapter, we saw that once Holly went inside Deadend Crow and fought that avatar version of him, she couldn't use her ether gear ability because he was using an ether jammer to block it. But when Jin and Laguna got in there, we saw that Jin was actually able to use his to cut off the avatar's arm. And we end up finding out in this chapter that the reason why he was able to do that is because Klein is actually flying around Deadend Crow's real body and using her ether gear to basically absorb the electrical signals that he's sending out in order to use the ether jammer. Which I really love the scene for two reasons. One, we get to see Klein's smug face, and I love seeing that. She just looks so adorable in that scene. And two, this is actually a very creative way for Hero to actually use her ability, because we've been so used to seeing her use it in combat that I honestly forgot that it had its property to it. And actually seeing her use it in this way in this chapter is actually making me hope that in future chapters we'll get to see Hero utilizing some of the other members' abilities in creative ways like this outside of combat. Now, of course, when Tali realizes that she can actually use her ether gear again, she immediately uses Melt to destroy the Deadend Crow avatar. And then she asks Jin and Laguna why they didn't just use the Eden Zero's main cannon to destroy Deadend Crow when they had the chance. And they pretty much just say, well listen, you may not consider yourself to be one of our friends and allies, but Shiki does consider you to be a friend right now. And he wouldn't sacrifice one of his friends in order to kill his enemy no matter what the cost was. So because of that, we are kind of stuck in a situation where we couldn't sacrifice you either in order to kill Deadend Crow. So we're kind of just stuck in a situation. So we might as well just go through his body right now and see if we can find a way to either slow him down or kill him from the inside. And you can actually see in the scene that Holly's actually starting to reconsider her plans of betraying Shiki and the gang just because of this one situation. Also on top of that, we got a moment earlier in the chapter, or like a page or two before this, where Jin actually mentions Klein being his little sister, and we actually get to see a flashback of, I guess, Holly's little sister, the one that Deadend Crow apparently killed, and man, this kid was actually kind of adorable. And I mean, of course, the reason why Hero's doing all of this, kind of like showcasing the more human side of Holly over these last two chapters, is just to kind of make us more accustomed to the character, more, make her more likable, and that way at the end of the arc, when she actually ends up not betraying the team, we can see her going forward throughout the series as a potential ally to the Eden Zero crew. And then we cut over to Team Rebecca, and we actually get to see them starting out the process of moving all the crew members' moms onto the Eden Zero ship. And we actually get this moment where Homura and Wise actually get to say goodbye to their mom for the final time. And Homura's is actually very sad because she didn't have the best relationship with her mom, but she's still very upset finding out that she died the way she did. And she's hoping that even though they didn't have the best relationship, that she can find some kind of peace in the afterlife. And we get this moment where we actually get to see that Homer is still very hung up on the fact that people around her that she knows are constantly dying around her. Like, she's still hung up on the fact that Creed died in the last arc, that Witch died, that Valkyrie ended up dying. Like, we see that even 3 years later, Homer is still blaming herself for all the deaths that are happening around her, and it makes me wonder what's going to end up happening with the character later on when we actually get an arc more focused on her. Because does this mean that we're actually going to get to see an arc where she's, hard person to say it, but, suicidal? Where she thinks that, if one more person ends up dying she's close to, that she has to kill herself or distance herself from her friends because she doesn't want to risk putting them in any more danger. I don't know, it's actually going to be interesting seeing where Hero actually goes with this kind of like plot line of her blaming herself for all these deaths. And then we just end the scene with Rebecca kind of like reassuring herself and reconfirming that she's definitely going to go forward with Planet Eater in order to make sure that all these mothers who actually died and that Ziggy was using can actually have some kind of peace in the afterlife. And then we get to the big reveal at the very end of the chapter, where once we continue to fight between Shiki and Ziggy where we left off in the last one, we see that underneath Ziggy's mask this entire time was a much older version of Shiki. And I mean, as hype as I was to see this reveal, we all kind of just saw this coming from like a mile away, because Hero foreshadowed this like crazy throughout the series, especially over the last few chapters. Now, what's really interesting is what we end up finding out at the very end of the chapter after the big reveal, because we cut back to the plotline of 20,000 years into the future. Because when we cut to that timeline and we see the robots actually taking the dead bodies of Shiki, and I guess we can now assume that it actually was Rebecca, to Planet Eden, we end up finding out that they're actually planning on doing an autopsy on Rebecca to see exactly what happened to her. But because the male human, aka Shiki, was actually still alive, they put him inside this healing pod, and we get to see that his body looks very beat up. In fact, it actually kind of looks like from the drawing on the chapter that he actually is missing the lower half of his body. And we end up finding out that the place they found the two bodies in is actually the alley Cosmos. And finding that out actually puts everything into like a whole new perspective and makes the whole reveal that Ziggy is actually Shiki so much more insane because of the fact that now we know what actually happened to Ziggy, and actually makes a lot more sense why he was so mad at Shiki in the end of the last arc when he chose not to destroy the bombs. Because by using context clues, we can now kind of assume that basically what ended up happening in Ziggy's original timeline was that he actually chose to try to stop the bombs from exploding, and instead ended up dying, or not dying, but ended up getting his entire crew killed, including Rebecca, leaving him kind of damaged and kind of just stuck in space for 20,000 years. And then when he finally regains consciousness and the bots try to figure out who he is by asking him what his name is, the only name he can get out is Ziggy, which brings up the question, was there a Ziggy in his original timeline, and did that Ziggy actually go through the same kind of thing? Like, were they just kind of stuck in an infinite loop, and then this Shiki finally broke that loop? Or was there some kind of like alternate circumstances that created that version of Ziggy in the original timeline that the Ziggy that we're dealing with now is from? Like, now that we had this reveal, there are so many questions that need to be answered. Like, for starters, what happened to, I guess now we can call him Shiki in the future, that made him want to go about coming back into the past and destroying all of humanity? Was it something that happened when the boss gave him his new robotic body? Did they actually kind of like just reprogram him to want to destroy all humanity so they can create their future? Or was there something they actually ended up finding out that actually made him think, alright, all humans have to die? Also, not that long ago, we got this line from Ziggy where he said that Shiki's in existence that actually can't be allowed to exist in the universe anymore because he's a danger to it. So now that we know that Ziggy actually really is Shiki, what did he find out about himself in the future that actually makes him realize, hey, I'm a threat to the entire universe and I had to kill myself in the past before I can actually end up doing any damage to it? Also, I guess at some point in the 20,000 year future, Shiki eventually ends up finding out exactly what a Furion is and what it's used for, because the Shiki we have in the current day, as far as we're aware, has no idea what it is and what it can do. But Ziggy apparently knew what it was because he wants it, so I guess at some point he finds out in the future what it is and plans on using it to destroy Mother. Which again brings up the question: why is he after Mother? What happened in the future to make Ziggy turn evil? Because I mean, yeah, we've seen Shiki be a lot darker than he usually is, but Ziggy is just straight up pure evil. So I wonder what happens to Ziggy or Shiki in the future that actually makes him go down that path. I mean, was it just the like trauma of losing everyone around him, all his friends and family, in that explosion, and kind of just blaming himself for it? Or maybe the bots in the future did end up corrupting him. I mean, as of right now, nothing we've seen from them makes it seem like they actually would do that. But who's to say, you know, maybe at some point they actually decide, hey, we want to make sure our future actually exists. And the only way it can happen is if these certain events happen, so we're going to send you back to make sure those events happen. But anyway guys, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed. I'm going to try to sit down and rack my brain around all the evidence that we had, pointing to Ziggy being the future version of Shiki in the previous chapters, and basically just try to figure out a way to kind of make sense of Shiki becoming this. But that is it for the video guys, thanks for watching, I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, please drop me a like, subscribe to the channel, I would greatly appreciate that. I'm trying to reach my first major goal of reaching 1,000 subscribers, and I would really appreciate your help getting there. But that's it for the video guys, thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.